The ocean hides danger even on calm days, and one wrong splash can pull predators from the deep. Surfers, swimmers, divers, and lifeguards face the same truth that sharks strike fast and without warning. Storms, murky water, sound, and light can turn peaceful coastlines into hunting grounds in seconds. Even steel cages, jet skis, and rescue teams are no match when an apex predator decides to attack. These stories show how quickly fun, work, or exploration can turn into a fight for survival. Watch till the end. November 2nd, 2025 began with a heavy blanket of fog resting over the restless waters of Gansbai, a place known for strong currents, rocky edges, and the presence of huge predators that moved silently beneath the surface. Damon Vermeulen, a 34-year-old lifeguard, stepped onto the shore before sunrise as he did every day. He had grown up near the sea, choosing work that kept him close to the water he loved. Friends often said he carried a calm strength, and he used that steady nature to help swimmers, divers, tourists, and anyone caught by sudden changes in the ocean. Damon trained daily, running long distances and swimming against rough waves so he could handle emergencies without hesitation. On this cold morning, he checked rescue equipment as the sky remained a dull gray. The season had brought unpredictable weather, and the coastline often shifted from calm to dangerous in minutes. Damon had learned to read those early signs, noticing how the surf thrashed harder against the rocks and how kelp patches drifted faster than usual. He kept a rescue sled, ropes, flares, and medical supplies ready in case trouble appeared without warning. As he prepared for routine rounds, an urgent call reached the station. 2 surfers had been pushed onto a rocky outcrop by sudden waves. They were stranded on jagged stone as water crashed around them, making escape impossible without help. The tide was rising fast, and each new surge threatened to sweep them off balance. Damon moved quickly, attaching a tether line to his waist and securing the rescue sled behind him. Other crew members on the shore held the rope and prepared flotation tools, while Damon entered the cold sea. The water felt sharp against his skin as he pushed through foamy swells. His hands pulled through long strands of kelp while he kicked hard against the strong pull of the current. The fog blocked most of the view, leaving only the faint shape of the rocky outcrop ahead. The surfers clung to a narrow ledge as water slammed upward around them. Damon pushed forward, guiding the sled toward them. Just as he reached the halfway point, the sea shifted beneath him. A deep shadow rose from below, cutting through the water with sudden speed. Before Damon could react, a huge great white burst upward, its wide jaws opening as it surged toward him. The impact was brutal. The powerful bite locked onto his upper thigh and shoulder, sending shock and pain shooting through his body. The force dragged him downward, twisting his body as the current pushed and pulled around them. The fog hid the violence from the surfers, who could only hear splashes and feel the waves jolt beneath their feet. Damon fought to keep his head above the water, but the predator pulled him deeper, its movements strong and chaotic. Crew members on the shore saw the rope jerk sharply and knew something had gone wrong. They threw flotation lines and activated acoustic devices meant to disrupt predators, but the turmoil around Damon only grew stronger as the giant shape thrashed beneath the surface. The struggle had only begun, and the water around Damon churned as the massive predator carried him into darker depths. The force of each pull weakened his muscles, and the cold waves struck against him with heavy weight. The tether line attached to his waist stretched tight, trembling from the stress of the shark's violent motions. Crew members on shore dug their feet into the sand while holding the rope, feeling each sudden jolt as Damon disappeared under the surface again. The waves rolled harder as the shark twisted its body. Foam rose in wide circles while Damon's form vanished beneath the chaos. The current slammed him against drifting kelp, and pressure built in his chest as he tried to break free. The great white continued its attack with abrupt shakes, striking with instinctive power. The fog above smothered every outline, hiding nearly everything from the surfers waiting helplessly on the outcrop. They felt the sea shifting under them and braced their hands against sharp stone, while trying not to slip into the dangerous water below. On the shoreline, rescue crew members threw additional flotation devices into the surf, hoping they might reach Damon at the right moment. Acoustic tools echoed through the fog, sending pulses through the water, but the massive shape beneath remained aggressive. The rope jerked again, weaker this time, as Damon's strength faded. His body hit an underwater ridge, the impact reducing what little control he had left. The predator surged upward once more before diving into deeper water, dragging Damon's form beyond sight. The rope sagged suddenly, losing tension, and all movement along the line stopped. The quiet that followed felt heavy, broken only by the crash of distant waves. Crew members kept scanning the water, refusing to stop searching. Moments later, they spotted Damon drifting near the edge of the rocks, carried by the current. They reached him with poles and flotation lines, pulling him toward the sled that had floated back to the surface. His body bore deep wounds along his leg and shoulder, and his wetsuit hung in torn strips. The tide pushed him against the rocks as the rescue team worked to lift him onto the sled. His head rested loosely, and his eyes remained closed. Despite the rushing water and urgent efforts, his breathing had faded too far. The team raced to shore, where medical workers waited with stretchers and equipment. They gave every possible measure of care while carrying him across the wet sand, but his pulse remained still. When the final evaluation was made, he was declared deceased. The news spread quickly through the group on the beach, reaching the stranded surfers who watched silently from the rescue boat that had collected them. Their relief at being saved was overshadowed by the loss they had just witnessed. Later that day, the coastline grew quiet. Fog lingered, and the water settled again, leaving only scattered gear and rope marks in the sand. A memorial was placed near the station, with flowers and small tokens left by locals who respected Damon's dedication. His passing reminded the community that even the strongest guardian of the sea could face danger beyond control. The ocean returned to calm, but the memory of the attack settled deeply among those who lived and worked along its edge, shaping how they approached every future rescue. July 9, 2024, settled over Fort Lauderdale with warm air, soft waves, and a sky still holding the last traces of daylight. Natalie Pierce, 28, moved with calm confidence as she prepared for her nightly swim near the long pier. She had grown up along the Florida coast, learning to swim before she could even ride a bike. Years of training shaped her into a strong athlete, and she now worked with a local coach who pushed her to improve her endurance and speed. Swimming at night felt peaceful to her, a way to clear her mind and enjoy the cool water after long days of work. Natalie lived a quiet life with a small circle of friends and spent most of her free time near the ocean. She respected the sea and understood its dangers, but she felt comfortable in familiar waters. Her coach stayed nearby during each session, watching from the beach or the pier to make sure she was safe. That night, the sea looked normal, yet hidden changes had already begun below the surface. A heavy storm earlier that day had pushed leaves, branches, and small fish toward the shoreline. The runoff made the water cloudy and noisy, mixing natural debris with disturbed schools of baitfish. These conditions often pulled opportunistic predators closer without anyone noticing. As the sky darkened, Natalie slipped into the water and started her smooth strokes near the tall wooden pilings of the pier. The glow from distant streetlights bounced across the waves, giving the area a calm and gentle look. Her coach watched her progress while holding a rescue buoy, staying alert in case she drifted too far. Every splash she made blended with the sound of the waves hitting the pier, creating a steady rhythm. Beneath that rhythm, a large shape moved through the murky water. A 10-foot bull shark, strong and bold, followed the scent of small fish drifting in from the storm runoff. The cloudy water made shapes blend, and sudden movement near the surface caught its attention. Natalie continued swimming without realizing that the predator's path was drawing closer and closer to hers. The dark shape circled once, then again, sensing splashing and motion that seemed unfamiliar. As she turned toward a piling to start another lap, the water around her shifted. A sudden push of current brushed her side, followed by a faint vibration she barely noticed. The shark rose from the deeper water with powerful speed, its body hidden in the clouded darkness that storms leave behind. The calm of the night vanished in an instant when the predator lunged toward the surface with terrifying force, aiming for the movement above it. The strike hit before Natalie even understood the danger rising from underneath her. Sudden pain shot through her thigh as the powerful bull shark clamped down with crushing force. The impact jerked her sideways, pulling her underwater in one swift motion. Bubbles rushed around her as she lost her sense of direction, her body twisting in the churning water. The strong predator dragged her downward, and the cloudy water made everything blur. Her hands pushed against the currents as she tried to rise, but the pull on her leg kept her trapped in the dark surge below the surface. The shark thrashed, shaking its head with short, violent motions that sent sharp jolts through her leg and hip. The movement slammed her against one of the pier's tall wooden supports. The sudden collision left her gasping, but she could not reach the surface. The murky water swirled with debris, and bits of sand floated around her as the predator shifted its grip. Splinters from the piling scraped her skin as she tried to push away, but the force around her thigh held tight. Up on the pier, her coach reacted the moment she vanished beneath the waves. A rescue buoy sailed through the air and hit the water. The surface churned with red streaks as Natalie fought to reach it. The shark twisted again, tearing deeper into her leg before releasing its hold for a moment. Her body shot upward from the release, and she broke the surface long enough to draw one weak breath. The water around her rolled in rough circles, her arms struggling to stay above the waves. Before she gained control, the predator rose again from below. Its second pass raked across her forearm, slicing through skin and leaving long cuts along her arm. The hit rolled her onto her back, sending another splash of red across the surface. Her coach moved closer with steady strokes, pulling the buoy toward her. Lifeguards raced into the water with boards, cutting through the choppy waves. Natalie felt the shock spreading through her body as her strength faded. She fought to stay afloat, kicking weakly with her uninjured leg. The shark circled once more, its dark form drifting just far enough away to fade into the murk. Lifeguards reached her and grabbed the buoy, closing their hands around her shoulders and pulling her toward shallower water. With careful teamwork, they kept her head up, guiding her away from the deeper area. Each movement brought new pain from her thigh and arm, but she stayed conscious as they moved her through the dark water. Near the shoreline, more responders waited with medical kits. They lifted her onto the sand, placing towels beneath her and applying pressure to the bleeding wounds. A tourniquet tightened around her upper leg as they worked quickly to slow the blood loss. Sirens grew louder as an emergency vehicle arrived. Responders stabilized her, secured the wound sites, and lifted her onto a stretcher. Her breathing grew steadier as they prepared her for transport. She was rushed to the medical center, where doctors treated the deep injuries to her leg and pelvis. Hours later, she remained weak but alive, her condition stable. The event spread through the local community, leaving swimmers and coaches shaken. Many learned how even storm runoff could shift predator behavior. Her recovery took time, but she slowly regained strength, supported by her friends and her determined spirit. The night reminded everyone along the pier that even familiar waters can change without warning, turning a routine swim into a fight for survival. December 5, 2023, marked another work trip for 42-year-old Lucas Breton, a calm and patient marine cameraman known for spending long hours under the sea to capture large ocean animals. He had worked in many regions before, but Rangiroa always held a special place for him. The wide lagoon, strong currents, and deep channels made it a perfect place to observe big creatures that pass through after storms. Lucas had trained for years, learning how to stay steady in rough water and how to keep filming, even when huge shapes passed close. He enjoyed careful routines and trusted the strong cages used for diving. They were old but had worked well for many others. That morning the sky looked clear, but the sea below still carried leftover force from recent storms. Sand and broken coral moved in slow clouds along the ocean floor, making the water look thick and hazy. Lucas prepared his camera with simple movements, checking the lens and battery before stepping into the metal frame waiting beside the boat. The crew helped lower him down until the cage settled a short distance above the sand. He held a rail inside and let his eyes adjust to the dim, moving shapes in the water. Tiger sharks were known to pass through the area often. Their wide heads, striped bodies, and slow turning movements made them easy to recognize, even in low light. Lucas had filmed many before, but the shifting water gave everything an uneasy feel. Small fish darted in and out of the foggy water, and the cage creaked gently as currents pushed against the bars. A large shape appeared first as a blur. Lucas lifted his camera, focusing on the faint outline that grew clearer with each slow turn. The tiger shark moved with calm power, its long body sliding through the hazy water. As it came closer, Lucas tried to follow its path, but more sand rose from the bottom as a new wave of current pushed across the cage. The sudden cloud made it hard to track the predator. He shifted his stance to keep filming, placing one foot against a lower bar for balance. Then the first strike came. The tiger shark rammed the side of the cage with a heavy impact that shook the whole structure. The metal bars bent inward slightly, showing how much force the hit carried. Lucas gripped the rail tightly, trying to steady both himself and his camera. The predator circled, disappearing into the cloudy water, then came back with another strong hit. The weakened bars groaned as they pushed inward, letting small streams of sand flow through cracks that had never been there before. Lucas moved back inside the frame, but the shifting bars left narrow openings he had not noticed at first. The large tiger shark returned again, this time pushing its head through one of the bent gaps. The movement happened fast, faster than Lucas expected. Its strong jaws clamped onto his shoulder and side, dragging him into the corner of the cage. Blood filled the water in dark clouds, and the metal frame shook as the predator tried to pull him through the opening. Above him, shadows moved as divers reacted to the sudden change, preparing to help in any way they could. The water around Lucas darkened as the shark pulled backward with fierce strength, forcing his body against the twisted metal. His arm shook from the pressure while his chest burned from the sudden force that knocked air from his lungs. His legs pushed against the floor of the cage to stay inside, as the large body outside moved with fast turns that sent sand upward in thick clouds. Each movement created new jolts through the bars, making the frame shake under his weight. Above him, distant shadows shifted rapidly as the team tried to respond to the struggle below, sending long poles downward through the water in an attempt to force space between the predator and the cage. Lucas felt the sharp tearing along his side as the shark released for a brief moment, only to strike again with a heavy impact against the weakened area. The bent gap widened as the metal groaned under the repeated hits. His legs slid across the floor of the cage from the sudden push, and his back pressed hard against the far corner. Blood drifted upward in slow streams, mixing with the sand and forming dark shapes that moved with the current. The tiger shark continued turning, bumping the frame from different sides, probing the opening each time it passed. The support line began to tighten as crew members above activated the winch. The cage lifted slowly, rising through the hazy water while the shark followed closely, rushing upward each time the metal moved. Lucas tried to brace himself against the shifting floor, using the few sturdy bars that remained straight. Another impact sent the cage tilting slightly, causing him to slide toward the broken section again. He forced his weight back with the strength he still had, though his limbs felt weaker with each passing moment. As the cage rose closer to the surface, the shark made one more violent hit against the damaged corner. The frame jerked upward sharply as the winch pulled harder, and the predator's wide head scraped against the metal before it finally sank back into the deep water below. The lift continued in steady motion until the cage reached the underside of the boat. Crew members leaned over the side, lowering ropes to secure the frame and pull it fully onto the platform. Lucas felt the air rush over him when the cage opened, and hands guided him onto the deck where a stretcher waited. His body trembled from stress and blood loss as the medical crew worked quickly around him. Bandages pressed firmly against the wounds, while others checked for serious damage along his shoulder and side. A strong pressure wrapped around his torso while the team lifted him toward the transport vessel arranged for urgent care. The world around him blurred in faint colors as the boat sped toward the medical station, its engine rumbling through the floor beneath him. By the time they reached the emergency dock, his skin had grown pale from the amount of blood he had lost. He was carried into the treatment room where doctors began to secure the wounds, stopping the heavy bleeding with practiced urgency. Hours passed as they worked to clean and close the deep marks along his shoulder and chest, repairing damaged tissue with careful attention. When he was finally stabilized, his breathing returned to a slow and steady rhythm. In the days that followed, reports spread through the diving community about the event. Safety teams reviewed the cage damage, noting how the older metal had weakened under storm conditions. Many divers spoke about the importance of checking equipment more often and avoiding unpredictable waters after major weather changes. Lucas remained in recovery, grateful for the help that saved him, but aware of how quickly calm conditions had transformed into a dangerous struggle. His experience served as a reminder of the force large predators could show when environmental changes pushed them into unexpected behavior. January 24, 2025, began with clear skies and warm sunlight spreading across Gansby, and Léon Duplessis woke with an excited energy he had planned for weeks. At 38, he loved gatherings, loud music, and long afternoons on the water. He worked in event planning and enjoyed hosting friends more than anything else. Many of his weekends were spent on the ocean, and he often said the sea felt like a second home. His closest friends knew he liked to mix fun with a little risk. always eager to jump into the water before anyone else. The yacht party he arranged on this day was meant to be a light-hearted break from work, filled with food, music, and swimming. The boat anchored near a well-known channel close to Shark Alley, a place famous for seals and calm water around midday. The guests on board included a mix of old friends, co-workers, and 2 crew members hired to manage the anchor, sound system, and safety gear. The atmosphere was bright and lively as people moved around the deck, sunbathing and taking pictures. The sea looked peaceful, with soft waves rising and falling under the sunlight. Leon walked around, greeting guests and holding a cup he had refilled several times since morning. He felt relaxed and cheerful, pleased that everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. Not far below the surface, however, the water held a very different scene. Seal activity had increased earlier that afternoon, and a large great white shark had moved into the channel to hunt. It glided slowly through the deep blue, circling the area in wide arcs. The splashing from the yacht was unusual for that part of the channel and caught the attention of the predator, which began drifting closer out of curiosity. On the deck, several guests had already jumped into the water, floating near the ladder and laughing as they kicked their legs. The warm conditions made the sea feel safe and inviting. Leon watched them and decided to join despite the drinks he had consumed. His steps grew unsteady, but he made his way to the rail, eager to feel the water around him. Without pausing, he pushed off and fell into the sea below, sending a wide splash through the calm surface. Beneath him, the great white reacted instantly. The sudden burst of movement and sound triggered the predator's hunting instinct. It turned sharply, rising fast from deeper water. The shape moved upward with strong, powerful strokes, drawn to the disturbance above. The guests floating nearby saw only a brief shadow before the shark erupted from below. It reached Leon in seconds, clamping its jaws around his thigh with crushing force. The impact drove him downward, pulling him under as the water around them exploded into bubbles and foam. A loud thrashing began beneath the surface, and the once calm sea changed into a churning circle of violent motion. Screams rose from the deck as people rushed to the sides, staring in shock at the sudden struggle below. The shark shook its head fiercely, tearing through fabric and muscle while the waves turned red. The noise of panic spread across the entire yacht as the gravity of the moment took hold, shifting the joyful party into a scene of fear and chaos. The peaceful bay had turned into a circle of fear as the violent movement continued beneath the yacht. Crew members rushed to grab life rings, ropes, and a flare launcher, hoping to interrupt the predator's motion. The shark kept pulling downward, its powerful body twisting through the water while red clouds spread across the surface. Several guests held onto the rail, unable to look away from the chaos below. Others backed away in shock, their legs unsteady as panic tightened around the entire deck. The crew threw flotation devices toward the disturbance, but the strong currents and violent thrashing made them drift to the side. The predator released its grip only to turn sharply and strike again, causing another burst of foam and spray near the hull. The water rippled with fast, sharp movements as the shark continued testing and shaking its grip, pulling deeper with each motion. The crew managed to fire a flare into the water, hoping the bright light and sudden sound would push the predator away. For a moment, the sea stilled, but then another quick movement showed the shark circling once more. When Leon's body finally rose toward the surface, it drifted without strength, carried by the soft push of the waves. Crew members reached into the water with a long hook pole, pulling it close to the ladder and lifting it onto the rear platform. The injuries were severe, and the absence of movement made the outcome clear, even before anyone attempted aid. The joyful gathering had transformed into a scene marked by stillness and shock. As every guest stood in silence around the rear of the yacht, a rescue boat arrived shortly after, bringing medics who examined the body and worked quickly. But the damage was too great to reverse. The area around the yacht remained tense, with patrol crews scanning the waves and monitoring the shark's position. When the announcement was finally made, the air on board felt heavy. Friends who had been laughing moments earlier now stood with pale faces and trembling hands, unable to process how quickly the day had changed. Authorities later gathered statements and explained how the mix of loud splashing, swimming near a seal-rich area, and unpredictable predator behavior had created the worst possible conditions. The shoreline community received the news with sadness, and warnings were strengthened for anyone planning leisure activities in high-risk waters. A simple afternoon meant for fun left behind deep grief, and a reminder that even calm seas can hide immense danger. July 17, 2021 began with bright sun over the Outer Banks, as Tyler Nash prepared for another day of fast rides and risky moves on the open water. At 29, he had built much of his life around high-speed sports. Growing up near the coast, he spent most of his childhood racing small boats, learning wave patterns and testing how far he could push himself without losing control. As he got older, he turned these habits into a hobby that brought him both excitement and attention. Friends often joined him during practice sessions, filming as he tried new tricks for his online followers. Tyler trained often at Cape Hatteras because the wide stretch of water gave him room to move freely. He knew the area well and was aware of its strong tides and sudden shifts in currents. Yet he also trusted his fast reactions and careful planning. This morning, he rode out with a small group of friends who followed in a support boat. They checked his equipment, adjusted the camera angles, and watched the calm sea blend with the long horizon. Tyler felt ready, confident that he could get a perfect shot for his new video. The water seemed peaceful at first, but activity below the surface was building. A large group of bluefish had been feeding close to shore, creating splashes that spread outward in quick bursts. Their movement stirred the lower water layers, and the flashes of their scales reflected bright patterns. These sudden shifts drew the attention of predators from deeper areas. Far beneath Tyler, a short-fin mako glided through the cooler water, sensing the fast activity above. Tyler rode farther out before speeding up for practice runs. He lifted the jet ski into smooth arcs, letting the engine push him forward. His friends kept a steady pace behind him, watching for any signs of trouble. The sea remained mostly calm on the surface, but the swirl of fish nearby made certain areas unpredictable. Tyler, however, stayed focused on his movement. He tightened his grip, turned sharply, and launched into a high jump, planning to complete a backflip that would look dramatic on camera. As he rose into the air, the sea below shifted. The feeding fish scattered in wide circles as the mako surged upward with powerful speed. The predator moved fast enough to break through the cloud of churning water below the jet ski. Tyler reached the top of his arc, unaware of the force rising toward him from beneath. The moment he descended toward the surface, the water below erupted. The jet ski jolted sideways as something massive struck it from beneath. Tyler felt the sudden shake move through the entire craft as he lost control. The impact knocked the jet ski off its path, flipping it sharply and sending him into the air with no time to adjust. Before he could orient himself, a sharp burst of pain shot through his thigh. A strong pull dragged him downward as the mako clamped its jaws around his leg. The water closed in around him, and within seconds the calm scene had turned into a fast, violent struggle, with the predator's strength pulling him deeper into the chaotic surf. The force dragging him downward felt endless, twisting his body in rough spirals as water churned around him. He tried to push upward, but the grip on his thigh held tight, pulling him through clouds of sand and foam. For a moment, he could not tell which direction led to the surface. The predator's sudden turn sent sharp waves through his injured leg, making every movement harder. He swung his free arm in wide arcs, fighting the current as much as the creature itself. A sudden shift came when the hold loosened just enough for him to break free. He kicked upward, lungs burning, feeling the water lighten above him. When he reached the surface, he gasped for air, struggling to stay upright as pain shot down his entire side. His friends reacted fast, tossing large floating objects and moving their boat toward him. The distraction worked, and the predator hesitated at the shifting shapes crowding the water. The changing motion around Tyler gave him a few seconds of safety as the creature drifted farther away. The support boat reached him quickly. Hands pulled him on board, steadying his shaking frame and laying him across a secure surface. Blood spread across his leg in long streams, mixing with the spray on the deck. His breath came in short bursts, but he stayed awake, gripping the edge of a seat as the boat sped toward the nearest dock. The loud engine and sharp spray across his face reminded him he was moving toward help and away from danger. Medical workers arrived as soon as the boat reached shore. They wrapped thick bandages around his leg and added padding to slow the bleeding. Tyler's friends stayed nearby, watching as he was placed on a stretcher and moved into an ambulance. The long ride to the hospital blurred into soft lights and steady motion, while he tried to keep his focus on staying calm. Doctors confirmed that muscle damage ran deep but had not destroyed bone. His recovery would take time, and movement would stay limited for weeks. Even so, he understood how close the whole event had come to ending much differently. The incident spread through the local community, reminding many that fast water sports near feeding grounds involved hidden risks. Tyler knew he would return to the water someday, but the memory of the sudden strike stayed with him, shaping how he approached speed, distance, and awareness. The ocean still felt familiar to him, yet its strength now carried a sharper edge, one he would never forget. On June 12, 2025, the evening sky over Baja California glowed softly as the sun faded, and the first signs of night settled across the long stretch of coastline. Isabella Cruz, 27, moved with calm purpose along the shore, preparing her small kayak for a night route she had been planning for weeks. She worked as a young researcher for a coastal study group, spending much of her time tracking fish patterns, charting water changes, and testing safe paths for future night surveys. Growing up near La Paz, she had always felt close to the sea and learned early to read its shifting moods. Her family often said she had a deep connection with the water, and she carried that feeling into her work. She had been chosen to test the new night navigation route because she understood the coastline well and could move smoothly in low light. She carried a small lantern attached to her kayak, both to mark her position and to guide her through darker stretches of open water. A teammate named Mateo followed her progress from a support vessel farther offshore, watching the faint glow of her lantern from time to time. The water was calm that night, with only light ripples on the surface. Bioluminescent plankton spread across the area, lighting the waves in soft blue flashes whenever her paddle dipped into the water. These glowing trails looked peaceful, but they also drew small fish closer to the surface. Isabella paddled slowly, pausing every few minutes to take notes on a waterproof card. The cool breeze brushed her face, and the quiet around her made the ocean feel bigger than usual. She drifted past a rocky point where the moonlight shone on the surface like silver paint. Fish moved near her kayak, drawn by the mix of soft lights. She kept her movements gentle, trying not to disturb the water too much. Everything seemed smooth and predictable, exactly the calm test she hoped for, until the sea shifted beneath her. A sudden movement brushed the underside of the kayak, causing a faint vibration that made her sit still. Before she could react, a large shape shot upward from the darker water below. A 10-foot scalloped hammerhead rammed the side of her kayak with strong force. The blow sent her body jolting forward, her hands gripping the paddle as she tried to steady herself. The shark clamped its jaws around her calf, the pressure sharp and sudden. Isabella kicked hard, twisting her upper body while the kayak tipped dangerously to one side. The predator shook its head, pushing her leg against the hull as the kayak tilted even further. The water around her lit up in streaks of glowing blue as she splashed, her arms moving fast to stay above the surface. The shark's weight pinned her briefly before it loosened, preparing to turn again. Isabella felt her leg burning from the punctures, and her breath grew short as she tried to keep the kayak from flipping. Up ahead on the support vessel, Mateo acted fast, lifting a handheld air horn and blasting it toward the water. The loud burst carried across the calm sea, and the hammerhead responded by pulling away, its wide head turning sharply as it drifted into the darker water. Isabella floated beside her kayak, bleeding and exhausted, waiting for help as the water settled around her again. Isabella stayed still in the gentle waves, her body weak from loss of strength and the sharp ache spreading through her wounded leg. The water around her carried faint trails of blue glow from the plankton, slowly fading as the movement settled. She gripped the side of the kayak, trying to steady her breathing while the support vessel drew nearer. The pain in her calf pulsed with each beat of her heart, but she kept herself upright, careful not to disturb the water again. Mateo reached her first, lowering himself toward the edge of the vessel and extending both arms to bring her closer. Her body felt heavy, the mix of shock, cold, and blood loss turning her limbs stiff and unsteady. Once she was guided onto the deck, she lay flat on her back, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The wound along her calf and ankle showed deep punctures where the hammerhead's teeth had cut through skin and muscle. The crew moved quickly with first aid supplies, pressing clean cloth against the injury to slow the bleeding. Isabella kept her eyes half open, focusing on the soft lights on the control panel rather than the pain running up her leg. Her mind replayed the moment of impact again and again, the sudden rise of the wide-headed shape and the force that had knocked the kayak. Each memory left her stomach tight, her thoughts cloudy with fear. As the vessel moved toward the harbor, she felt the gentle hum of the engine beneath her body, The sky had grown darker and only faint moonlight remained above the water. Her leg throbbed, but she stayed calm, listening to the quiet movements of the crew as they monitored her pulse and kept the bandage firm. The sea behind them looked peaceful once again, giving no sign of the chaos from earlier. When they reached the dock, medical staff lifted her onto a stretcher and carried her toward a waiting ambulance. The lights along the shoreline blurred in her vision, and she let herself rest, knowing she was now safe on land. Doctors later confirmed she would recover fully, though walking would remain painful for some time. The incident became a strong lesson shared among her research team, showing how even familiar waters could become unpredictable when light, plankton, and night conditions mixed together. Isabella continued her work months later, with greater caution and deeper respect for the creatures that moved silently beneath the surface.